And right now, we are 2 minutes away from the end of the trading day. Romaine Bostick alongside Katie Greifeld taking you through to that closing bell with the global simulcast. Carol Massar, Tim Stenovec, they join us from the radio room as we welcome all of our audiences across all of our platforms, including our partnership with YouTube. An interesting day in the market. But Carol, I do want to start with that breaking news that we got a little while ago, just a few minutes ago here. Warner Brothers Discovery said to be telling its shareholders to reject the offer from Paramount and favor the existing deal from Netflix.
Yeah, we've been looking through how the stocks are trading. Warner Brothers has been down all day, but it's still down about 2.5%. This story, after deliberating and reviewing the Paramount bid, Warner Brothers board still views the company's existing agreement with Netflix as offering greater value, certainty, and terms than what Paramount has proposed, according to those people in the know.
So remember, these are two different deals. They're not apples to apples. They're apples and oranges, basically. And Netflix's deal doesn't include those pay TV networks. So the traditional linear TV networks. So it's just for the studio. The question remains what the future of those linear TV networks is.
Well, again, according to reporting, the company views its existing agreement with Netflix as offering greater value because, I mean, if you do the math, as Bloomberg Intelligence did, in what those networks would be valued at, apparently you come out a little bit higher when it comes to the Netflix offer. So it's interesting to see this headline from Warner Brothers appearing to favor that Netflix bid.
Well, Netflix getting a nice little bid into the close, now up about 0.8%. As far as the Mag 7, 6 of those names looks like they are going to finish the day roughly in the green, led largely by Tesla, which looks like it's going to close at a record high. Despite that boost that you got from some of those names, the majority of the stocks across the tape are in the red on the day, and that's a big part of the reason why you're seeing the Dow Jones Industrial Average close lower by about 300 points or 0.6%. The S&P 500 lower by 16 points or 0.2%. And the Russell 2000 also drifting lower by 11 points or roughly about 0.5%. The bright spot here, of course, are the NASDAQ indices, each up about 0.25%, but that's largely because of the lift from some of those Mag 7 names.
All right, so back to the large caps, S&P 500, where we see certainly the impact of some of those Mag 7 names. I'm looking at 368 names, nonetheless, lower in today's session, Katie, 133 to the upside, 2 unchanged.
Similar story when we take a look at the sector circle. More losers than gainers. You have one important gainer, and that's the technology sector, higher by about 0.3%. A lot of that coming down to Tesla. Consumer discretionary communication services also finishing the day in the green. Your biggest loser, though, probably no surprise, is energy, down 3%. Of course, we saw WTI fall below $55 a barrel earlier today. It managed to climb a little bit above that, but still the lows of 2021 back in sight, Carol.
All right, guys, let's go to some of the individual gainers, if I may. PayPal on that list at its highs, up about 2.3% in today's session, finishing with a gain of about 1 percentage point higher after the company applied to become a bank in the U.S. Move, at least according to some analysts, logical, could unlock some long-term monetization, should be approved given the favorable regulatory environment, again, according to some of these analysts. But again, a lot of the reporting out on this from the analyst community says the timeline is uncertain, could take years. So just something to keep in mind. Let's go to Comcast. This one was a top performer, #1 gainer in the S&P 500. I believe also the #1 gainer in the NASDAQ 100 in today's session. Yes, up about 5.5%. David Faber over at CNBC making some comments about interesting trading activity, particularly in the swaps market and also in options. A quote, "I don't know what's happening exactly." I will say the stock, some outperformance in many months. Stock, though, is under pressure, down about 22%, but just certainly popping up on our radar. For something kind of completely different, this stock, the ticker is RZLV. We're talking about Resolve AI, up almost 40% at its highs intraday, up 28% here at the close. It's an AI solutions company, announced that it expects to exit this year with annual recurring revenue exceeding $200 million. They go on to say the results materially exceed the company's original objective of reaching $100 million in annual recurring revenue by year end and surpassing the $150 million exit rate guidance issued just months ago. So some outperformance there. The stock is still down about 18% year to date with 7% of the float short. And I just want to mention, honorable mention, Tesla. I do think it may have hit a record close. Let me just look here.
Record high.
Record high, rather.
You don't need a terminal when you have Romaine.
Yeah, I know. Well, Okay.
Wow.
Stock up 3% here at the close and a new all-time high. The first one this year, right?
Yeah, first one since last year, since December of 2024. So it's been quite a while. Do you know why, Carol, that it's hitting a record high?
Darn you, Romaine Bostick.
Okay.
I don't
Tim,
know. Do
what do
you
you
know
got?
why?
No, I don't.
Yeah. Actually, we wanted to talk to Keith Naughton about, like,
Yeah,
why are we
we spent time
seeing
talking about
outperformance?
Ford and GM, and you know, it's interesting that on a day like today, when we see a big change from Ford as of yesterday, and the stock react today, that we see success at EVs or robotaxis, maybe is what
Maybe it was the
investors
EU.
are thinking about when it comes to Tesla.
Was it
I
the
don't know.
EU proposing 90% car emissions reduction target?
The headline says on the terminal, it's amid that self-driving optimism.
There we go.
There
I
you
said
go.
robotaxi,
Driving
so.
optimism.
Hey, I want to talk about some of the decliners on the day today. There were so many energy stocks in the red that I
Where's
just
Jim
chose the
Cramer?
S&P 500 composite energy down 3% today. All 71 components of this were lower. Katie mentioned energy stocks falling as signs of an oversupply and potential peace talks weighed on oil prices. WTI falling to its lowest price going back to February of 2021. Major decliners include Exxon, Mobil, Chevron, ConocoPhillips, Phillips 66, and more. Also, shares of Pfizer falling on the day today. This after the company forecasts revenue next year, little or no sales growth for the next year. That'll be $59.5 to $62.5 billion. Shares fell today by 3.4%. The company expects next year's adjusted profit to reach $2.80 to $3 a share, and it's targeting more than $7 billion in savings by 2027. And finally, ULCC, that's Frontier Group, ultra low cost carrier. That's the ticker, down 11.2% today. Frontier shares fell as much as 15% earlier in this session. It was the most going only back to August after the company announced that James G. Dempsey has been appointed interim CEO. He replaces longtime leader Barry Biffle.
All right, a quick check on yields. We should just point out that we are down for a third straight day on yields on the shorter end of the curve, only down about 2 basis points, but obviously the trajectory that a lot of folks had priced into this market prior to that Fed meeting a week ago. You're also seeing the rest of the yield curve shift lower here on the day, so basically a parallel shift down here as we see 2 to 3 basis points across the curve.
All right, so let's go back to Warner Brothers Discovery because, again, some headlines just crossing, and we do have our own little write-through on the Bloomberg about Warner Brothers planning to reject Paramount Skydance's hostile takeover due to concerns about financing and other terms. You know, this is something that we've been talking about around the table. I don't know if you guys have been talking about concerns about Paramount Skydancing and having enough of the money. And I know at one point, right, wasn't Larry Ellison kind of backstopping it? But you do wonder about the pressure with Oracle shares and what they've been under and what that has done certainly to his wealth.
Well, this is, you know, what the company decides to do is only part of it. The regulatory process is an entirely different part. And remember, President Trump has said he will be involved in this process. And Affinity Partners, his son-in-law's private equity firm, is also involved in making a bid for Warner Brothers Discovery. So we will have to wait and see the regulatory process and who ends up winning. So it's one thing for a company to say something, but it's another thing for the regulatory approvals to happen.
But to Carol's point, the big part of the equity in that bid was backstopped by a trust that manages the wealth of Larry Ellison. That, of course, is David Ellison's father. But according to Bloomberg News reporting, people familiar with the matter, because it's a revocable trust, assets can be taken out of it at any time, and Warner Brothers may have no recourse if that happens. So it sort of explains some of the concerns here about the financing that was proposed.
Yeah, absolutely. And we talk about where Netflix is getting the financing. We know they have, obviously, that mix of cash and debt that they plan to use. Obviously, there'll be a stock component for this transaction as best. So at least strictly from a shareholder standpoint, it's easy to see why this might be a little bit more beneficial to them. Also, as Tim, I think you were pointing out earlier, the idea that this does not include those cable networks, which, let's face it, a lot of folks don't want. It just seems like a cleaner deal. But of course, I feel like nothing about this deal is clean.
I love that you went there because I feel like how many times have we gone back and forth based on either something one of the companies says, something we hear from the White House. So I think ultimately until we know.
Can somebody just call the White House now and just ask them what they want and just cut this? You know, why are we even going through this? Yeah.
Okay, we could call the White House. We're going to be speaking to Felix Gillette in just a few minutes, and he'll be able to
That's
give
almost
us some
as
more
good,
information on
but
this too.
Yeah.
Yeah. No.
He's with us right now.
We'll get
so.
some clarity. He can hear you, Romaine.
That's good.
He can
Is
hear
he?
you.
He's in that room with you?
He's in here with us. We snuck
That's
him
a
in
big
just
room,
now.
by the way.
That's how quick we are.
Okay.
Unbelievable.
Smuggled,
One day you'll invite
smuggled
us
him
into
in,
it.
he says.
All right. Enough, you kids. Do I have to turn this car around?